Nathan Brooks stood in his small repair shop, cleaning the oil and grease from his hands with an old rag. The sun was setting over Cedar Falls, Iowa, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. He had just finished fixing Mrs. Henderson's old tractor, the third repair job that week. The money wasn't much, but it would help pay the bills and put food on the table for him and his daughter. Life had been hard since his wife Claire died 3 years ago in that terrible car accident. Nathan had been left alone to raise their daughter Sophie, who was now 8 years old. He did his best to be both mother and father to her, working long hours in his shop during the day and making dinner, helping with homework, and tucking her into bed at night. The people in town knew him as the guy who could fix anything. Tractors, trucks, lawnmowers, even the old washing machines that nobody made parts for anymore. If it was broken, Nathan could make it work again. He locked up the shop and walked across the gravel driveway to their small house. It wasn't fancy, just a 2-bedroom place with peeling paint and a roof that leaked when it rained hard. But it was home. Sophie was sitting at the kitchen table working on her math homework when he came in. "Hey kiddo, how was school?" Nathan asked, ruffling her brown hair. "It was okay. We learned about the solar system today. Did you know Jupiter has like 1,000,000 moons?" Sophie said, looking up at him with bright eyes that reminded him so much of Claire. "Not quite 1,000,000, but yeah, it's got a lot," Nathan said with a smile. He started making dinner, which was going to be spaghetti again because that's what they could afford this week. Sophie didn't complain. She never did. They ate together at the small kitchen table, talking about her day at school and her friend Katie, who had gotten in trouble for talking during class. Nathan told her about the tractor repair and how Mrs. Henderson's cat had knocked over his toolbox while he was working. It was a normal evening, the kind they had almost every day. Quiet, simple, and safe. After dinner, Nathan was washing the dishes when Sophie suddenly pointed out the window. "Dad, look at that." Nathan turned and saw a bright light streaking across the darkening sky. At first he thought it was a plane, but it was moving too fast and the light was too bright. The streak of light grew bigger and brighter, and then there was a sound like thunder. The whole house shook. Dishes rattled in the cabinet. Sophie grabbed onto the table with wide eyes. "What was that?" she asked, her voice shaking a little. Nathan's heart was pounding. That thing, whatever it was, had crashed somewhere close. Very close. He looked out the back window and saw smoke rising from the cornfield behind their property. An orange glow lit up the darkness. "Sophie, I need you to stay inside and lock the door," Nathan said, his voice calm but firm. "Call Mr. Peterson next door and tell him what happened. Don't come outside until I come back. Understand?" "But Dad..." "Sophie, stay inside. I'll be right back." He grabbed his heavy flashlight from the drawer and his toolbox from the shop, though he wasn't sure why he thought he'd need tools. Something had crashed in his field and he needed to see what it was. Maybe a plane. Maybe a satellite. He hoped nobody was hurt. Nathan walked quickly through the trampled cornstalks, following the path of destruction toward the glow. The air smelled like burned metal and something else he couldn't identify. Something chemical. As he got closer, he could see a crater in the ground, maybe 30 feet wide. The corn around it was flattened and scorched black, and in the center of the crater sat something that made Nathan stop in his tracks. It wasn't a plane. It wasn't a satellite. It was a craft unlike anything he had ever seen, even in movies. The thing was shaped like a teardrop, about 20 feet long, made of metal that seemed to shimmer and change colors in the light from his flashlight. Parts of it were torn open, with sparks shooting out from the damaged sections. Black smoke poured from cracks in its hull. Whatever this thing was, it was badly damaged. Nathan approached slowly, his boots crunching on the burned earth. The craft was warm, almost hot to the touch. He could hear sounds coming from inside, like electronic beeping and the hiss of escaping air. Then, with a sound like a sigh, a section of the hull opened up. A ramp extended down to the ground, and Nathan took a step back, not sure what to expect. A figure stumbled out of the craft and collapsed onto the ground. Nathan rushed forward without thinking. The figure was moving, trying to stand up, but failing. As he got closer, his flashlight revealed something that made his mind go blank for a moment. This wasn't a person. Not a human person, anyway. It was something else. The being was shaped like a human with 2 arms and 2 legs and a head, but that's where the similarities ended. Her skin was silver and seemed to glow with a soft inner light. She was tall, maybe 6 feet, wearing some kind of tight suit that was dark blue or black, covered in glowing symbols that were flickering and going dim. Her face was beautiful but strange, with large eyes that were deep purple and hair that looked like it was made of starlight. She looked up at Nathan, and he could see pain in those purple eyes. She said something in a language that sounded like music, but he couldn't understand a single word. She tried to stand but fell back down with a gasp. That's when Nathan saw the injuries. Her arm was burned, the silver skin blackened and blistered. There was a deep cut across her side, and dark liquid that might have been blood was seeping through her suit. Nathan made a decision. He didn't know what she was or where she came from, but she was hurt and needed help. He knelt down next to her and carefully put her arm around his shoulders. She was lighter than he expected. He helped her to her feet, supporting most of her weight. "It's okay," he said, even though she probably couldn't understand him. "I'm going to help you." She looked at him with those strange purple eyes, and he saw surprise there along with the pain. Maybe she was surprised that he wasn't running away screaming. Maybe she was surprised he was helping her. Nathan didn't know and didn't care. Someone needed help, and that was enough. They walked slowly back toward his workshop, the alien woman leaning heavily on him. She kept looking up at the sky, her free hand touching something on her belt. She seemed scared, like she was expecting something bad to happen. Nathan glanced up too, but saw only stars in the clear night sky. When they reached the workshop, Nathan helped her inside and over to an old couch he kept in the corner for when he needed to rest during long repair jobs. She sat down heavily, wincing in pain. Nathan grabbed his first aid kit, though he had no idea if human bandages and medicine would work on an alien. Still, he had to try something. As he cleaned the burn on her arm as gently as he could, the alien watched him with those intense purple eyes. She said something else in her musical language, and though he couldn't understand the words, he understood the tone. She was grateful, and she was scared. Nathan heard footsteps outside and turned to see Sophie standing in the doorway, her eyes wide as she stared at their visitor. "So much for staying inside, Dad," Sophie whispered. "Is that an alien?" Nathan looked at the silver-skinned woman sitting on his couch, her strange suit flickering with dying lights, her purple eyes watching them both. He thought about lying, but what was the point? "Yeah, kiddo," he said quietly. "I think it is." The first night was the hardest. Nathan didn't know what the alien woman needed or how to help her properly. He cleaned her wounds with water and wrapped them in clean bandages, hoping that would be enough. She drank water when he offered it, which was a relief. At least they had that in common. Sophie brought a pillow and blanket from the house, and the alien woman nodded her thanks. She seemed to understand kindness even if she couldn't understand their words. Nathan sent Sophie back to the house to sleep, promising he would stay in the workshop to keep an eye on their unexpected guest. He called Mr. Peterson and told him it was just a small meteor, nothing to worry about. The old man seemed satisfied with that answer. Nathan knew he should probably call the police or the military or someone, but something stopped him. The way the alien kept looking at the sky with fear in her eyes, the way she touched that device on her belt like it was a weapon. She was running from something, and Nathan's gut told him that getting the authorities involved would make things worse for her. He spent the night in his workshop chair, dozing on and off, waking up every time the alien woman moved or made a sound. In the morning, she seemed a little better. The glow of her silver skin was brighter, and she could stand without help. She pointed at the device on her belt and then at Nathan, then made a gesture like she was talking. She wanted to communicate. Nathan nodded and watched as she pressed a button on the small box attached to her belt. A holographic screen appeared in the air, covered in symbols he didn't recognize. The alien's fingers moved over the screen, touching and swiping, but then she made a sound of frustration. The device flickered and died. It was broken, probably damaged in the crash like everything else. Over the next 2 days, they fell into a strange routine. Nathan went about his normal work during the day, fixing a lawnmower for old Mr. Chen and replacing the alternator in Katie's mom's van. But every spare moment he was in the workshop with the alien, trying to understand her and help fix her translator device. Sophie came by after school and sat with them, drawing pictures and chattering away even though the alien couldn't understand her. The woman seemed to enjoy Sophie's company, and Nathan often caught her watching his daughter with a sad, longing expression. The alien pointed at herself and said a word that sounded like Lyra. Nathan repeated it and she nodded, pleased. He pointed at himself and said Nathan, then gestured to Sophie and said her name. Lyra repeated both names carefully, her accent making them sound musical. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Nathan brought the translator device to his workbench and studied it carefully. The technology was far beyond anything he had seen before, but the basic principles were the same as any electronic device. Power source, processor, display connections. He could see where the circuits had burned out and where connections had come loose. Using his smallest tools and steadiest hands, he began to repair what he could. Lyra watched him work with intense interest. She would point at certain parts and nod or shake her head, guiding him toward what was important and away from what wasn't. They communicated through gestures and drawings. She sketched symbols in the air with her finger, and they glowed there for a moment before fading. Nathan realized it was some kind of holographic technology. She drew a picture of her ship and pointed toward the field. Then she drew figures with weapons and pointed at the sky. Someone was looking for her. Someone dangerous. On the third day, Nathan finally got the translator working. It wasn't perfect, and the voice it produced was choppy and mechanical, but it was enough. When Lyra spoke, the device converted her words to English. "Thank you," the device said in a flat voice that didn't match her musical tone. "You saved my life. I am in your debt." "You don't owe me anything," Nathan said. "You were hurt, I helped. That's what people do." Lyra's purple eyes studied him for a long moment. "Not all people. Not in my experience." "Then you've been meeting the wrong people," Nathan said. He pointed toward the field. "Your ship. Can it be fixed?" Lyra looked down. "I don't know. The damage is severe. Without proper tools and materials, I thought it would be impossible. But then I thought the same about this translator, and you fixed it." She looked at him with something like hope. "Would you help me? If I can repair my ship, I can leave before they find me." "Who's looking for you?" Nathan asked. "The Krell. They are a military people, powerful and cruel. They attacked my escort ships and tried to capture me. I escaped, but only barely. If they find me here, they will take me, and they will not care what happens to you or your child." Nathan felt a chill run down his spine. "Why do they want you?" Lyra hesitated, and the translator was silent. Finally, she spoke. "I am valuable to them. That is all you need to know. Please, will you help me repair my ship? I promise I will leave as soon as it is able to fly. I will bring no more danger to your home." Nathan thought about Sophie, about the quiet life they had built here. He thought about the risk of helping someone being hunted by what sounded like alien soldiers. The smart thing would be to say no. The safe thing would be to tell her to figure it out herself. "Yeah," Nathan said. "I'll help you." That night, after Sophie was asleep, Nathan and Lyra went out to the crashed ship in the field. He had covered it with old tarps to hide it from anyone who might pass by, though their property was pretty isolated. Lyra opened the ship with a touch, and Nathan climbed inside with his flashlight. The interior was like nothing he had ever seen. The walls seemed to be made of that same color-shifting metal, and there were no buttons or switches anywhere. Just smooth surfaces that glowed when Lyra touched them. The crash had torn open panels and exposed the ship's inner workings. Nathan could see conduits carrying some kind of energy, crystal matrices that looked cracked and damaged, and systems that made no sense to him at first glance. But as Lyra explained through the translator what each system did, Nathan began to understand. The quantum drive that let the ship travel faster than light, the navigation computer that guided it through space, the shield generators that protected it from damage, the power core that supplied energy to everything. They were all alien, all far beyond human technology, but they were still machines, and machines could be understood. Nathan spent hours examining the ship, taking notes and sketches. Lyra watched him work with growing amazement. She had expected him to be lost and confused, but instead he asked smart questions and made connections she hadn't expected. When he pointed out that the main power conduit was cracked and leaking energy, causing a cascade failure in the shield systems, she realized he truly understood what he was looking at. "How are you doing this?" Lyra asked. "You have no training in my people's technology. Your world has not even left its own solar system, yet you understand my ship better than some of my own engineers." Nathan shrugged, running his hand along a damaged panel. "A machine is a machine. Doesn't matter if it's a car or a spaceship. Energy goes in, work comes out. Things break in predictable ways. You just have to understand the logic of how it's put together." "You are a remarkable person, Nathan Brooks," Lyra said quietly. Over the following days, Nathan worked on the ship whenever he could. He used materials from his workshop, things that shouldn't have worked but somehow did. Copper wire to replace damaged conduits, car batteries rigged together to jumpstart dead systems, epoxy and metal patches to seal cracks in the hull. It was rough work, improvised and ugly, but it was effective. Slowly, system by system, the ship came back to life. Sophie helped too, holding tools and keeping watch for strangers. She and Lyra had become friends despite the language barrier. Lyra taught her words in her own language, and Sophie taught Lyra about Earth. They looked at Sophie's picture books together, and Lyra showed Sophie holographic images of her own world. A place of gleaming towers and 3 suns of ships that sailed between stars. One evening, as Nathan was sealing the last of the hull breaches, Sophie asked Lyra a question. "Do you have kids?" Lyra was quiet for a moment. "No, I wanted children, but my life has been complicated. There has been no time for a family." "That's sad," Sophie said. "Families are important." "Right, Dad?" "Right," Nathan agreed, not looking up from his work. "Your father is a good man," Lyra said. "He takes care of you well. After your mother died, that must have been hard for him." "How did you know my mom died?" Sophie asked. "I see it in his eyes. The same sadness I see in my own reflection. He lost someone he loved very much." Nathan stopped working and looked at Lyra. Their eyes met and something passed between them, an understanding. They were both alone in different ways, both carrying grief, both trying to do their best in a universe that hadn't been kind to them. The moment was broken by a sound from above, a deep thrumming that made the ground vibrate. Nathan looked up and saw lights in the sky. Not stars, not planes, ships. 3 of them moving in a search pattern over the town. Lyra's face went pale, and her silver skin seemed to dim. "They're here. The Krell have found this world. It won't be long before they find me." Nathan watched the 3 ships move across the night sky, their lights sweeping back and forth like searchlights. They were still several miles away, hovering over the town of Cedar Falls, but they were clearly looking for something. "Looking for Lyra. How much longer until your ship can fly?" Nathan asked, already knowing the answer wouldn't be good. "The main systems are functional thanks to your repairs," Lyra said, her translator making her voice sound mechanical and cold even though Nathan could see real fear in her eyes. "But the faster-than-light drive needs another day of work, maybe 2. And the weapons are completely destroyed. Even if we launch now, they will catch us easily." "Then we'll have to hide you better," Nathan said. He turned to Sophie. "Go back to the house. Pack a bag with clothes and anything important. Be ready to leave quickly if I tell you to." "Dad, what's happening?" Sophie's voice was small and scared. "Just do what I say, kiddo. Everything's going to be fine." Nathan tried to sound confident, but his heart was racing. He had no idea how to fight off alien soldiers with advanced weapons. He was just a mechanic from Iowa with a shotgun that probably wouldn't even scratch their ships. Sophie ran back to the house and Nathan turned to Lyra. "Tell me the truth. All of it. Why are they hunting you? What are you that's so important they'd bring 3 warships to find you?" Lyra looked down at her hands, and when she spoke, her voice was so quiet that the translator barely picked it up. "I am not who you think I am. My full name is Lyra Velnara. I am a princess of the Velnara sovereignty, 3rd in line to the throne of one of the most powerful civilizations in the Andromeda galaxy." Nathan stared at her. A princess. He had been hiding royalty in his barn for almost a week. "You're a princess." "Yes, the Krell Dominion has been at war with my people for 3 generations. They seek to end the war by forcing a political marriage between their war leader and someone of my bloodline. If they succeed, it would give them a legal claim to our throne and access to our territory. I was traveling to a diplomatic summit when my escort was ambushed. I was the only one who escaped." Nathan ran his hand through his hair trying to process this. "So you're telling me that those ships up there are looking for a princess, and if they find you on my property, they're going to take you and probably kill me and Sophie because we saw too much?" "Yes," Lyra said simply. "That is why I told you I should surrender myself. I will walk out into the open and let them take me. You and Sophie will be safe." "No," Nathan said firmly. "That's not happening. I didn't spend a week fixing your ship just to let you throw yourself away. Nathan, you don't understand what you're dealing with. The Krell are ruthless. They will destroy your entire town to find me if they have to. How many people live in Cedar Falls? A few thousand? Those lives are not worth saving one person, even if that person is me. And what happens if they take you? This forced marriage, what then? Then the war ends, but my people lose. The Krell will control both empires within a generation. Billions of lives under a military dictatorship that sees peace as weakness and kindness as foolishness. Lyra's purple eyes met his. But those are not your people, Nathan. This is not your war. You should not have to die for conflicts between the stars. Nathan was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Then he made a decision. How long do we have before they track you to this location? Hours, maybe less. They are scanning for my ship's energy signature. Your repairs have brought many systems back online, which makes it easier to detect. Then we need to work fast. Can you bring up the ship's systems? The ones that control the shields and the cloak? The cloak is damaged beyond what you've been able to repair. It would take specialized equipment we don't have. But it still has power going to it? Yes, but it won't function properly. Nathan smiled, an idea forming. It doesn't need to function properly. It just needs to function. Come on, I need to show you something. For the next 3 hours, Nathan worked on the cloaking system with a desperate energy. He explained his plan to Lyra as he worked. The cloak couldn't hide the ship completely, but it could scramble the energy signature enough to make it look like something else. Something natural, like an electrical storm or a power station malfunction. It wouldn't fool them forever, but it might buy them the time they needed. Lyra worked beside him, her skilled hands moving quickly to rewire systems according to his instructions. She had stopped questioning his methods. If this human mechanic said he could trick a Krell sensor array with spare parts and improvisation, she was willing to believe him. He had already done impossible things. At midnight, the Krell ships moved closer. Nathan could see them clearly now through his workshop window. Sleek, dark vessels with red markings and wings that looked sharp enough to cut through the air. They moved with predatory grace, sweeping back and forth in a search pattern that was closing in on his property. It's done, Nathan said, connecting the last wire. Fire it up. Lyra activated the modified cloaking system. The ship hummed and the air around it seemed to shimmer and twist. Nathan's radio on the workbench suddenly burst to life with static and strange sounds. The lights in his workshop flickered. Good, it was working. They'll detect the energy surge, Lyra warned. They'll come to investigate. I'm counting on it, Nathan said. He grabbed his shotgun from the rack. When they get here, I need you to hide in the ship. Stay quiet no matter what happens. Nathan, what are you planning? Something stupid, he admitted. But I'm good at that. 20 minutes later, the 3 Krell ships descended on Nathan's property. They landed in the field near the barn, their engines kicking up clouds of dust and flattening the corn. Nathan stood in front of his workshop, shotgun held loosely in his hands, trying to look calm even though his heart was hammering in his chest. A ramp extended from the largest ship and soldiers marched out. They were tall, maybe 7 feet, wearing armor that looked like black metal scales. Their helmets had glowing red visors and they carried weapons that hummed with energy. One of them, who seemed to be the leader, stepped forward. A speaker on his helmet crackled to life and a voice spoke in accented English. Human. We detected a power surge from this location. We are searching for a fugitive. You will allow us to search your property. This is private land, Nathan said, keeping his voice steady. You're trespassing. Your laws do not apply to us, the Krell soldier said. Stand aside or be removed. Nathan didn't move. He knew the shotgun in his hands was useless against their armor, but he held it anyway. I don't know what you're looking for, but there's nothing here except a guy trying to run a business and raise his kid. So how about you get back in your fancy ships and take your search somewhere else? The Krell soldiers moved forward, and their leader raised a hand. Nathan saw energy building in the weapon he carried. This was it. He was about to die, but maybe he'd bought Lyra enough time. Maybe Sophie had gotten far enough away. Maybe this wouldn't all be for nothing. Then a voice called out from the barn. Wait. Lyra walked out of the shadows, her silver skin glowing in the darkness. The Krell soldiers all turned toward her, weapons raised. Their leader took a step forward, and Nathan could hear satisfaction in his mechanical voice. Princess Lyra Velnara, we have been searching for you. You will come with us. I will, Lyra said. But I want your word that you will not harm these humans. They did not know who I was. They are innocent. You are in no position to make demands, Princess. Then kill me now, Lyra said calmly. A dead princess is worth nothing to you. No marriage, no treaty, no claim to my family's throne. Just another casualty of war. The Krell leader was silent for a moment. Then he lowered his weapon slightly. Very well. The humans will not be harmed if you come peacefully. Lyra walked toward the soldiers, and Nathan wanted to do something, anything, but he was frozen. He had failed. After everything, after all the work and all the planning, they were taking her anyway. Then Sophie's voice cut through the night. "Dead now!" Nathan didn't hesitate. He had rigged every explosive, every can of gasoline, every propane tank from his workshop around the barn. Sophie had the detonator, and when she pressed it, the world turned white and hot. The explosion threw the Krell soldiers back, their shields flaring bright blue as they absorbed the blast. It didn't hurt them, but it surprised them, and that was enough. Nathan ran forward and grabbed Lyra's hand. "Run!" They sprinted toward the barn where her ship was hidden. The Krell recovered quickly and opened fire. Energy blasts tore through the air, setting the corn on fire and blasting chunks out of the ground. Nathan felt heat wash over his back as a shot passed close enough to singe his shirt. They reached the ship, and Lyra opened it with a touch. Sophie was already inside, strapped into a seat. Nathan and Lyra tumbled in after her, and the ramp sealed shut behind them. Energy blasts hammered against the hull, making the whole ship ring like a bell. "Can this thing fly?" Nathan shouted over the noise. "Hold on," Lyra said, throwing herself into the pilot's seat. Her hands moved over the controls, and the ship's engines roared to life. They lifted off the ground just as more Krell soldiers poured out of their ships. The night lit up with weapons fire. "They're going to shoot us down," Nathan said, looking at the sensor display that showed multiple target locks on their ship. The ship responded to Nathan's touch in ways he didn't expect. The controls weren't physical buttons or sticks like in a car or plane. They were holographic fields that reacted to his hands, and somehow, the ship seemed to know what he wanted before he fully understood it himself. He pulled up, and the ship climbed into the sky, the ground falling away below them. His workshop, his home, the life he'd built with Sophie, all of it disappearing into the darkness. "3 fighters launching," Lyra called out from where she was working on an exposed panel near the back of the ship. Sparks flew from her tools as she rewired systems on the fly. "They'll catch us in less than a minute." Nathan looked at the display and saw 3 dots separating from the larger Krell ships on the ground. They were fast, much faster than Lyra's damaged vessel. He pushed the engines harder, and the ship accelerated. The force pressed him back into his seat. Sophie let out a small sound of fear behind him. "It's okay, kiddo," Nathan said, trying to sound calm. "Just like a roller coaster." "I hate roller coasters," Sophie said, but there was a tiny bit of humor in her voice. His brave girl. The first energy blast hit their shields, and the whole ship shook. Warning lights flashed on the displays. Nathan jerked the controls to the right, and the ship rolled, dodging the next shot. He was flying on instinct now, treating the spacecraft like a truck on icy roads, feeling for the limits of control and traction. "Shields at 60%, Lyra reported. "We can't take many more hits." Nathan dove toward the ground, skimming low over the cornfields and farmhouses of Iowa. The Krell fighters followed, their shots going wide as they adjusted to his erratic flying. He pulled up sharply, climbing almost vertical, and one of the fighters overshot him. For a moment, Nathan was behind it instead of in front. He looked at the weapons controls, but they were dark. "Dead." "No weapons?" he called out. "Destroyed in the crash," Lyra said. "All we have are shields and engines." "Then we better make them count." Nathan flew like he'd never flown before because he'd never flown before. But somehow it felt natural. The ship was an extension of his will, responding to his thoughts and reflexes. He wove between the Krell fighters, using their own ships as obstacles against each other. When they fired at him, he would put another fighter in the line of fire, forcing them to hold their shots or risk hitting their own people. They broke through the atmosphere, and suddenly the sky turned from blue to black. Stars appeared everywhere, more than Nathan had ever seen from the ground. For just a second, he was too amazed to be scared. Space. He was in space. Then the sensors screamed a warning, and Nathan saw what made his blood run cold. A massive ship hung in orbit above Earth. It was easily 10 times the size of an aircraft carrier, all dark metal and sharp edges with red lights running along its hull. Smaller ships swarmed around it like insects around a hive. "That's a Krell battlecruiser," Lyra said, and her voice sounded defeated. "We can't outrun it. We can't fight it. Nathan, I'm sorry. I've killed you and your daughter." "Not yet, you haven't," Nathan said. The battlecruiser was launching more fighters, and he could see weapon ports opening along its hull. But he also saw something else. A debris field from old satellites, chunks of metal and solar panels spinning in orbit. "Lyra, how long until you get that faster-than-light drive working?" 5 minutes minimum, why? Because I'm going to buy you 5 minutes. Nathan aimed the ship at the debris field and accelerated. The Krell fighters followed, and the battlecruiser fired a massive beam of energy that lit up space like a second sun. Nathan rolled the ship and the beam passed close enough that he could feel the heat through the hull. He flew into the debris field, weaving between chunks of destroyed satellites and space junk. The larger pieces were the size of cars, spinning and tumbling in complex patterns. Nathan's eyes tracked them all, his mind calculating trajectories and speeds without conscious thought. This was like navigating through traffic on the highway, just with more explosions and death. One of the Krell fighters clipped a satellite and spiraled out of control, crashing into a larger piece of debris. 1 down, 2 to go. Nathan led them deeper into the field where the junk was thicker and moving faster. A piece of solar panel as big as a billboard tumbled toward them, and Nathan waited until the last second before diving under it. The Krell fighter behind him wasn't as quick. The panel hit its shields and sent it spinning off course. 3 minutes, Lyra called out. Her hands were moving faster than Nathan thought possible, pulling out burned components and replacing them with parts she was cobbling together from other systems. The battlecruiser fired again, but this time it wasn't trying to hit Nathan. It was firing at the debris field itself, turning chunks of metal into clouds of shrapnel. They were trying to clear the field so their fighters would have a clean shot. Nathan pulled up and out of the debris, heading for open space. The last Krell fighter was right behind him. Then the battlecruiser did something Nathan wasn't expecting. A beam of light shot out from its hull and locked onto Lyra's ship. Not a weapon, a tractor beam. Nathan felt the ship slow down as the beam pulled them backward toward the battlecruiser's hangar bay. No, Nathan muttered, pushing the engines to maximum. The ship strained and shook, but the tractor beam was too strong. They were being pulled in. 90 seconds, Lyra said. The drive is almost ready. Nathan made a decision. He stopped fighting the tractor beam and instead turned the ship to aim directly at the battlecruiser. Then he pushed the engines to full power. Not away from the ship, but toward it. Lyra looked up from her work with wide eyes. What are you doing? Something stupid, Nathan said again. Hold on. The ship accelerated toward the battlecruiser, still caught in the tractor beam but now moving with it instead of against it. They picked up speed faster and faster, heading straight for the bridge section of the massive ship. Nathan could see windows there, could imagine the Krell commander inside watching them come. At the last second, just before they would have crashed, the tractor beam shut off. The battlecruiser turned hard to the side, its commander unwilling to risk his ship to catch one princess. Nathan pulled up sharply, skimming along the hull of the battlecruiser so close that he could see the details of its armor plating. Now, Lyra! Get us out of here now! Drive is ready, Lyra said, her voice tight. Jumping in 3, 2, 1, the universe folded around them. Nathan felt like he was being stretched and compressed at the same time, like every atom in his body was moving in different directions. Colors he didn't have names for flashed past the windows. Sophie screamed, and Nathan wanted to scream too, but his voice wouldn't work. Everything was wrong and strange and impossible. Then as suddenly as it started, it stopped. They were somewhere else. The stars outside the window were different. Earth was gone. The Krell ships were gone. They were alone in the dark between stars, floating in the peaceful silence of deep space. Nathan let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. His hands were shaking on the controls. Where are we? About 3 light years from Earth, Lyra said. She was slumped against the wall, looking exhausted. We're safe. For now. Sophie unbuckled herself and ran to Nathan, throwing her arms around him from behind. He could feel her shaking. Dad, that was scary. I know, kiddo. I know. Nathan held her hand, still staring out at the alien stars. But we're okay. We made it. Lyra moved to the pilot's seat and began working the controls. I need to get us to Velnara space. My people will protect us there. It's a journey of several days, but we should be safe if we stay in faster-than-light travel. Your people, Nathan said slowly. The ones you're a princess of. Yes. And what happens when we get there? What happens to me and Sophie? Lyra was quiet for a moment. I don't know. You saved my life. You gave up everything to help me escape. My family owes you a debt that can never be repaid. Nathan looked at his daughter, at her scared but excited face. He thought about his workshop back on Earth, probably destroyed by the Krell. His house, his truck, his tools, the life he'd built. All gone. He'd lost everything again, just like when Claire died. But he'd saved Lyra. and he'd kept Sophie safe. That had to count for something. One thing at a time, Nathan said. First, let's get to your people. Then we'll figure out what comes next. Lyra looked at him with those purple eyes, and Nathan saw something there he hadn't seen before. Respect. Maybe even admiration. You are an extraordinary human, Nathan Brooks. You fought a Krell battle cruiser with a damaged ship and no weapons, and you won. My people will want to hear this story. I didn't win, Nathan said. I just didn't lose. There's a difference. Sophie tugged on his sleeve. Dad, can I look out the window? I want to see space. Nathan smiled, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. Yeah, kiddo. Go ahead. Sophie pressed her face against the window, staring out at the stars that streaked past as they traveled faster than light. Nathan watched her wonder and felt a strange sense of peace. They had escaped. They were alive. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Lyra set the navigation system and then sat back in her chair. I need to tell you something. About who I really am and what helping me means. You're a princess. You already told me that, yes, but there's more. The Velnara sovereignty is one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. The journey to Velnara space took 4 days. 4 days of traveling faster than light, watching stars streak past the windows in colors that shouldn't exist. Nathan spent the time learning about the ship, asking Lyra endless questions about how everything worked. Sophie explored every corner of the small vessel, finding hidden compartments and storage spaces that even Lyra had forgotten about. They talked a lot during those 4 days. Lyra told them about her world, about cities that floated in the sky and oceans that glowed with bioluminescent life. She told them about her family, about her mother the Queen and her 2 older siblings who were more interested in politics than she was. She had always been different, she said, more interested in exploration and discovery than ruling. Nathan told her about Claire, about how they'd met in college and built a life together in Cedar Falls, about the accident that took her away and left him alone with a 5-year-old daughter and no idea how to be both parents at once, about the long nights and the hard years and how he'd learned that the only way forward was one day at a time. Sophie showed Lyra her drawings and taught her games from Earth. They made up songs, together in a mix of English and Lyra's language, which she said was called Velnari. Lyra was patient with Sophie, kind in a way that made Nathan think she would have been a good mother if circumstances had been different. On the 4th day, they emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of Velnara space. Nathan's first glimpse of the Velnara sovereignty took his breath away. A planet hung before them bigger than Earth and surrounded by massive rings of stations and ships. The rings glowed with city lights, and he realized they were orbital habitats, each one large enough to hold millions of people. The planet itself was covered in gleaming towers that reached up into the atmosphere, connected by bridges of light. 3 suns burned in the sky around the planet, bathing everything in golden light. Nathan counted at least 100 ships moving in organized patterns, from small craft like Lyra's to massive vessels that dwarfed the Krell battlecruiser they'd escaped from. This is Velnara Prime, Lyra said, and there was pride in her voice. Capital of the sovereignty, home to 12 billion souls. It's beautiful, Sophie whispered, her face pressed against the window. Lyra sent a signal, and within minutes they were surrounded by escort ships, sleek white vessels with elegant curves and glowing blue markings. They didn't point weapons at Lyra's ship. Instead, they formed a protective formation around it, guiding them toward the planet. The royal fleet, Lyra explained. They will take us to the palace. As they descended through the atmosphere, Nathan saw cities unlike anything he'd imagined, buildings that seemed to be made of crystal and light, parks filled with trees that had golden leaves, waterways that flowed between towers in defiance of gravity. Flying vehicles moved in orderly streams through the air, and beings of different shapes and sizes walked the streets below. The palace was on a floating island high above the main city. It was a structure of white stone and silver metal, with towers that rose toward the sky and gardens that seemed to hang in mid-air. They landed in a courtyard where dozens of people were waiting, all dressed in formal clothes that shimmered and changed colors. Lyra stood at the ship's entrance and took a deep breath. Are you ready? Nathan looked down at his oil-stained jeans and work shirt. I'm really not dressed for meeting royalty. You're dressed like someone who saved a princess. That's more than enough. The ramp extended and they walked out together. Sophie held Nathan's hand tightly, her eyes wide as she looked at all the alien beings watching them. Most looked similar to humans, but with subtle differences, different skin tones that ranged from Lyra's silver to deep blue to golden bronze, eyes of various colors and shapes. Some had markings on their skin that glowed faintly. A woman stepped forward from the crowd, and Nathan knew immediately this was Lyra's mother. She was taller than Lyra, with the same silver skin but hair that was pure white and eyes that held the weight of centuries. She wore robes that seemed to be made of starlight, and a crown of crystalline material rested on her head. Queen Serana looked at her daughter for a long moment, and then she pulled Lyra into a tight embrace. The formal atmosphere broke, and suddenly she was just a mother holding her child. "We thought you were lost. The Krell said your ship was destroyed." "I nearly was," Lyra said, her voice muffled against her mother's shoulder. "But this human saved me. Nathan Brooks and his daughter Sophie." The Queen released Lyra and turned to Nathan. He didn't know if he should bow or kneel or what, so he just stood there awkwardly. She smiled at his discomfort and spoke in perfect English. "Nathan Brooks, you have returned my daughter to me. The Velnara sovereignty owes you a debt beyond measure." "I just did what anyone would do," Nathan said. "No," the Queen said firmly. "Most would have turned away. Most would have been too afraid. But you risked everything. Your home, your life, your daughter's safety. That is not something anyone would do. That is something only a truly good person would do." She knelt down to Sophie's level, which surprised Nathan. A queen kneeling for his daughter. "And you, young Sophie. You were very brave. I hear you helped your father fight off Krell soldiers." Sophie nodded shyly. "I pushed the button that made the explosion." "A warrior in the making," the Queen said with a warm smile. She stood and gestured toward the palace. "Come. We have much to discuss, and you both must be tired from your journey." They were led into the palace through halls that seemed to be carved from single pieces of crystal. Holographic art floated on the walls, showing scenes from Velnara history. Servants bowed as they passed, and Nathan felt more out of place with every step. They were brought to a council chamber where more royalty and officials waited. Lyra's siblings were there, a brother and sister who looked at Nathan with curiosity. Military commanders in uniforms covered with medals. Advisors with serious faces. They all wanted to know what happened, how Lyra escaped, what the Krell were planning. Nathan told them the story as simply as he could. The crash, the repairs, the chase, the escape. He left out his fear and doubt, just gave them the facts. When he finished, the room was silent. Finally, one of the military commanders spoke. "This human flew through a debris field while being pursued by Krell fighters, then charged a battlecruiser head-on and forced it to break off a tractor beam. That is either the bravest or most foolish thing I have ever heard." "Both," Nathan admitted. "Definitely both." The room filled with laughter, and some of the tension eased. The Queen raised a hand for silence. "Nathan Brooks, Sophie Brooks, you have done us a service that cannot be repaid with mere money or gifts. But we must offer something. Tell me, what do you want? Name anything within our power and it shall be yours." Nathan thought about it. He could ask for wealth beyond imagination. Technology that would change Earth forever. A position of power in this vast civilization. But as he looked at Sophie, tired and overwhelmed by all the attention, he knew what he really wanted. "I want to go home," Nathan said. "Back to Earth. But I want your promise that you'll protect my planet. The Krell came there looking for Lyra. They might come back. I don't want my people caught in the middle of your war." The Queen nodded slowly. "That is a wise request. We will station ships in your solar system, hidden but watching. Earth will be under our protection. But Nathan, you must understand. You cannot simply go back to your old life. The Krell saw you. They know you helped Lyra escape. They will hunt you if you return to Earth." Nathan felt his heart sink. He'd known it was probably true, but hearing it confirmed made it real. He couldn't go home. Sophie couldn't go home. Everything they'd known was gone. Lyra stepped forward. "Mother, I have a request. I wish to serve as our first ambassador to Earth, to establish formal relations between our peoples. And I want Nathan to serve as my liaison, someone who understands both worlds." The Queen raised an eyebrow. "An unusual request, daughter. You know Earth is considered a primitive world by our standards. Such a posting would be seen as beneath your station." "Then let people think what they want," Lyra said firmly. "Nathan showed me that there is more to civilization than technology. His people have qualities we have lost. Resilience, creativity. the ability to make impossible things work with limited resources. We could learn from them if we gave them the chance. The Queen looked at Nathan. And what do you think of this idea? Nathan looked at Lyra, at the hope in her purple eyes. He thought about the last few days, about the bond that had formed between them. He thought about Sophie, who deserved a chance at something more than the small life he could give her back in Cedar Falls. He thought about the stars and the endless possibilities they represented. I think, Nathan said slowly, that I've already lost my old life, so maybe it's time to build a new one. The Queen smiled. Then it is decided. We will establish an embassy on Earth. Lyra will serve as ambassador, and Nathan Brooks will serve as her liaison and advisor. Sophie will attend our best schools and learn alongside children of the sovereignty, and when Earth is ready, we will welcome them into the galactic community. Over the following months, Nathan learned what it meant to be part of something bigger than himself. An embassy was built in a remote location on Earth, a compound that combined Vel,